All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about a building so legendary, it was crowned one of the original seven wonders of the ancient world, the incredible Temple of Artemis in Ephesus. For 1,000 years, this place was practically the center of the universe, for religion, for money, for culture. But that's where the mystery begins.
Because if you go looking for this architectural marvel today in modern Turkey, well, this is what you get. A single column, standing all by itself in a quiet, swampy field. It's peaceful, almost a little sad, you know? And it raises a pretty huge question.
I mean, how on earth do you go from a wonder of the world to this? To answer that, we've got to rewind the clock and piece together the whole story, what was lost, how it was lost, and the incredible tale of how it was found again. It's a journey into pure engineering genius, human ambition, and the relentless power of time.
So, first things first, let's just try to grasp the sheer scale of this place. We're not talking about just another ancient temple. No, this was an absolute giant, a titan of marble that completely pushed the limits of what people thought was even possible to build.
We actually have the dimensions, thanks to the Roman writer Pliny the Elder, and they are just staggering. At 425 feet long, it was bigger than a modern football field. It had a forest of 127 marble columns, each one soaring 60 feet into the air. And to really put that in perspective, this one building was about 4 times the size of the Parthenon in Athens. 4 times!
What's truly remarkable, though, is how they built it. It was the first massive building in the world made completely out of marble. And the architects made this brilliant but totally counterintuitive choice. They built this huge, heavy structure on soft, marshy ground. Why would you do that? To act as a cushion against earthquakes. The secret was this ingenious foundation of packed charcoal and sheepskins that created a stable, flexible base. And the decoration was just as groundbreaking. The temple was famous for a feature they called columnae celatae, which is a fancy way of saying sculpted columns. 36 of those massive marble pillars weren't just plain. Their lower sections were covered in these intricate, life-sized relief sculptures. Imagine walking into a forest of marble where the trees themselves were telling you stories. But the temple's story isn't just one of brilliant construction. It's also a super dramatic tale of destruction and incredible resilience. You see, this wasn't just one temple. It was more like a cycle of temples, each one rising from the ashes of the one before it.
So the first great temple, the one paid for by King Croesus, was finished around 550 BCE. It stood for nearly 200 years, until it was destroyed in a shocking act of arson. But the people of Ephesus, they refused to give up. They immediately started rebuilding an even bigger, more magnificent version, which was finished around 323 BCE. This is the temple that became a wonder of the world. It stood for 6 centuries before it was finally wrecked by Gothic raiders in 262 CE.
Let's go back to that first fire in 356 BC, because the story behind it is just wild. It was set by a guy named Herostratus, who confessed he did it for one single reason: to make his name famous forever. The Ephesians were so disgusted they passed a law making it a crime punishable by death to even speak his name. The irony, of course, is that by writing down the law, historians made sure we'd remember his name forever. And this next part perfectly shows the pride the Ephesians had. When Alexander the Great rolled into town, he offered to pay for the entire reconstruction, a massive fortune, if they just put his name on it. The reply is legendary. They diplomatically turned him down, saying it was unfitting for one god to build a temple for another. So smooth. They were basically telling Alexander the Great, thanks, but we've got this.
And to understand the kind of pride it takes to turn down Alexander the Great, you have to realize this building was so much more than just a place of worship. It was the powerful economic and social engine at the very heart of their city.
I mean, the Temple of Artemis was one of the most trusted banks in the ancient world. Kings, cities, regular people, they all kept their money there because it was so safe. Its grounds were also a sacred asylum, offering legal protection to anyone who could reach them. The temple owned huge areas of farmland, which generated enormous income. It fueled local industries like silversmiths making souvenirs. And it was the center of huge festivals, like the month-long Artemisia, that brought in people from all over the known world.
All of which makes its total disappearance even more baffling. After the Goths sacked it for the last time, one of the most famous buildings on Earth just vanished from history for over 1,400 years. This is the story of how it got lost and the epic quest to find it again.
So what happened? Well, after it was abandoned, the ruined temple became a free-for-all quarry. Its precious marble was taken and recycled into new buildings, churches, mosques, you name it. Then, nature finished the job. The river nearby slowly buried what was left under about 20 feet of silt and mud, completely erasing it from the landscape.
The rediscovery is a real adventure story. In 1863, a British architect named John Turtle Wood became completely obsessed with finding the lost temple. For 6 long, hard years, he dug trench after trench in the fields around Ephesus and found nothing. But then he got a lucky break. He found an old inscription in the city theater that described a sacred road used for processions to the temple. By painstakingly figuring out where that road was, his team finally struck the temple's marble foundations on the very last day of 1869.
Wood's incredible discovery is what allows us to finally bridge the gap between that amazing legend and that one lonely field. With all this history in mind, we can look at that single column and begin to imagine the world that it once stood at the center of.
So on one side, you have an artist's reconstruction based on what we know. Geologists even confirmed that the temple was originally built right next to a bustling harbor. And on the other side, you have the reality of today. The harbor silted up, the columns were all carried away, and the world just moved on, leaving only a ghost behind.
And the scale of that loss is just breathtaking. The temple was so thoroughly picked apart that not a single one of those giant pillars was left standing. In fact, the lone column you can see there today isn't even an original. It had to be pieced together from recovered fragments by archaeologists in the 1970s just to mark the spot.
So we end where we began, but with a whole new perspective. The story of the Temple of Artemis is a powerful reminder of what humans can create and also of how fragile it all is. And it leaves us with one final thought. If a structure this huge, this celebrated, this important to its world could be so utterly erased, what clues, what fragments, what single columns will our own civilization leave for the future to find?